Alright, boils and ghouls, this is attempt number 2 at this revisited video, since I recorded a half hour the other day, and it just decided, fuck you, I'm gonna freeze and corrupt the file, and I lost all of it. Now, there's a few movies that I revisit multiple times a year. Evil Dead 2, Evil Dead also, the first two, Day of the Dead, Halloween, and this movie, which to me is the greatest film ever made. Now, a lot of you know I saw Halloween on Halloween at 6 years old. That was how I first started with horror. So, I mean, that film means more to me than I can ever put into words. And it's the same with Carpenter's The Thing. I mean, this is my number 1 film. Halloween is my number 3 film, second horror film. So it's just wild just to think that John Carpenter, the same director, has 2 films in my top 2 horror films of all time. Now, just everything in this movie is fantastic. Like, this is masterful filmmaking, if there ever was an example of it. Dean Cundey being the DP, the cinematography is fantastic. Every shot in this movie, every frame, everything, every delivery of a character's line, every cadence, I wouldn't change a single thing about this movie, pun intended. Kurt Russell here is fantastic, as always, but the character of MacReady, like, you just love him instantly. Even the first time seeing this movie, not just because it's Kurt Russell, but he's an alcoholic, borderline alcoholic, and he still has everybody else's respect in this compound. Now, they're stuck in this compound in Antarctica for an undetermined amount of time. They never tell us how long they're stuck there. But I think this movie is the perfect film, too, for isolation and paranoia. Because the way that this group turns on each other once they find out what the thing is and that it could be anybody, they don't trust anyone. And put yourself in that situation, nobody would. Everyone would be so panicked and freaked out and paranoid of everybody around them, everything around them. Plus, and on top of that, how long that they've been here at this compound. Now, I've always assumed it's at least like 6 months to a year. It kind of seems like it's definitely been like half a year or so. They show Palmer and Knowles. Awesome scene when their dynamics amazing too. They're smoking a joint and he just puts his hand out to expect it, like, because this is like what they do every day, day in, day out when they're not working. And they watch these videotapes and TV shows on cassette tape that he says, like, I've seen this one already, like, so they've been here a while. How long? I don't know. But then the storm starts kicking in. And we see Windows talking to Gary, I think, or is it Blair? I think it's Blair first and then Gary later. But he says that he's been trying to reach people for 2 weeks and he can't get to anybody. So they're completely cut off out there in the middle of the freezing cold with nothing to do but what they do every day here. It would drive anyone insane. Then add an alien creature on top of that they have to deal with, and it could take the shape of anybody and could be anyone. The way that Carpenter captures all of that is just masterful. It's perfect. Now, I've always been a huge advocate for practical effects in horror. Unless it's, a certain genre like supernatural ghost films and stuff, it's a lot harder to do practical effects. CGI, if it looks good or if you have an effect you can't pull off, and you want this effect in your movie, of course, go the CGI route, but this movie is the reason I'm so heavy on practical effects. Because for me, Rob Bottin's work here, at only 22, 23 years old, which blows my mind every time that I think of that. 22, 23-year-old did all this amazing work. I think his work in this movie is the best practical effects ever put to film. Still to this day, they hold up amazingly. When I watch this movie, there are no distractions unless I'm recording the video. There's no distractions. Like, there is no phone, no computer, nothing. It's just watching. Just the whole feel of this movie. You could feel how fucking freezing it is just through the screen, which is just another testament to Dean Cundey and then the cinematography here. Now, this is going to be all over the place because anytime I try to talk about this film or Halloween or like any of those of my favorites, there's just so much that it's just thoughts coming from all different directions. Ennio Morricone's score here, also fantastic. Now, I did a list a while back of my favorite film scores, and you'll notice this one is not on there. I don't think it's an amazing score outside of this film, like to rank it high on a list or even on a list of top horror film scores, but it's perfect for this film. Like, Ennio Morricone is one of my favorite composers. He's done hundreds of movies, and he just knows exactly what needs to be composed, what needs to be played, what instruments, and he's just amazing at that. He was so good at that. Just the dum-dum, dum-dum, with the little synth beats going in between as it builds up. It's perfect for this movie. The sound design in this movie, like during the dog scene and the defibrillator scene, the sound that it makes, I can't even try to imitate it. It's like if you had a bunch of whips or ropes and you were shaking them real fast. If that makes any sense, like but not exactly like that. But you'll know what I mean. Oh, just every time the practical effects scenes come, they blow me away every single time. There's never a time I rewatch this film that it doesn't just put me in a state of awe that they were able to pull this off. And Bottin had to be treated for exhaustion like multiple times throughout the whole making of this movie because he was working day in, day out, all day, every day, making these effects. Now, I heard that we're getting a sequel to The Thing, that John Carpenter announced it. I don't know how I feel about this. Like, the prequel, I didn't know how I felt about that when they announced that. And I actually really liked the prequel. The CGI, man, is what really takes it down. And I know that's the case for most people who like that movie. But it's just, I would kill for a cut without the CGI put over the practical effects. Because they used a lot of practical effects. And they paid a lot of attention to the detail throughout all of this original film. How we see the axe and how it ends up getting stuck in the wall. Like, all of the detail that they put into the prequel is great. It just doesn't feel like The Thing because of the CGI. Like, the practical effects in this film are one of its defining characteristics. It's just the amazing effects work throughout this film. So I feel like if they can pull off a sequel to The Thing, bring Rob Bottin back. Bring him back. Like, that's one of the only ways I could see the effects. I mean, of course, the script has to be good. Everything else has to be up to par. But for the effects alone, bring back Rob Bottin. I know he's kind of like a hermit. Like, he doesn't like talk or do interviews much, and he has like a company, and that's it. He's been off the grid for a while. But look at all these legacy sequels that they're bringing back. Jamie Lee Curtis, Scream series. All these legacy sequels, they're bringing actors, actresses, directors back. Bring back the effects artist. Bring back Rob Bottin and have him do the effects work for the sequel. That would be a huge plus for me, and I would kind of be very interested. Until then, I don't know, man, about a sequel to my favorite film of all time. Just the way that this opens with the dog, with the beautiful shots outside in the snow, and it's being chased by the Norwegian helicopter, and they're throwing friggin' dynamite down too. Like, the first time you see this, I mean, maybe not so much today because everybody at least has heard of The Thing, and in the title alone, it's called The Thing. So obviously there is a thing, a creature, and it would make sense that the dog, there's something up with it. But it doesn't matter. Just the way it's shot and like the tension in the first scene like immediately piques your interest and says, all right, I know something's wrong with this dog. Likely it is this creature thing. But then what happens next? Like, is this his true form? And then, like, the first time you see this movie, you start getting all these questions immediately. And it works so well. Like, there are so many theories on this film and interpretations and stuff. I didn't even go into them on my hour-plus video on the thing a year ago. I said, maybe I'll do a separate video. Here is that separate video. And we're going to talk a whole bunch of theories and interpretations and stuff. That intro scene, great. And Bennings gets shot, and then later on Knowles is blasting the music, and he screams at him saying, can you turn the music down? I'm trying to sleep. I was shot today. Like, all the group dynamic with every character is fantastic in this movie. I love every single character. There's not a bad one in the bunch. Now, let's talk what type of crack they were smoking back when this came out that everyone deemed this a fucking failure and a bad movie. I don't know, man. When I just think of that idea of how panned this movie was and the critical reevaluation that it's been given over the last decades to now becoming, you look at any horror top 10 list, The Thing is at least on there, if not in the top 3 or number 1. Like, this isn't just my favorite film. This is many people's favorite horror movie of all time. I really want to know what was wrong with those people back then. And what movies they thought were great horror movies. If this was such a failure, not in even just box office or in critics' eyes, in viewers too, in horror fans, like, we're panning this movie. So, what a friggin' reevaluation this has gotten. I wouldn't say that Season of the Witch, Halloween 3 is on the same level, but that comes to mind also. Look how much that film was hated. And most people nowadays pretty much love that movie for the most part. Myself included. So it's interesting to see these great films, in this case masterpiece, just be panned to shit at the beginning. And then as the years go on, it's become one of the greatest horror films ever made. Let's talk remake for a second. Because anytime somebody asks me what your favorite remakes are, your favorite horror remakes, I never answer with The Thing. Because for me, this is its own thing. This is not a remake to me. I've seen The Thing from Another World a few times. It was, Howard Hawks, right? I know Carpenter was a big fan of him, the director. And we even got a sneak peek of it, which is funny how that turned out. In Halloween, you see the opening of The Thing, which Carpenter recreated that opening in this film. And then he went on to direct the remake, quote unquote. I don't consider it a remake. It's based off the same source material, Who Goes There, I'm pretty sure, if I recall correctly, it's called. But just for how the thing looks and the different forms of the thing and the practical effects in this, it brings this to a whole nother level than a remake. Like, this just isn't a remake to me. It's just another film based off of the same source material with some homages to the original movie. That's basically how I look at this. You'll never hear me say The Thing as an answer to greatest horror remakes, because to me it's so much more than that. I understand 100% why people do bring this up when remakes are discussed, but for me, it's in a world all of its own. I love when McCready's playing the chess on the computer and he's drinking, and when he's losing, he's had enough, he just pours the bourbon or whatever it is and just soaks the keyboard. Like, that shows they've been here a decent amount of time. Like that, the fact that Knowles and Palmer are watching the same shit they've seen a bunch of times already, and a few other things throughout this movie. So I always, like I said, guess between 6 months to a year. But who knows, man? They could have been here like a year and a half. Like, we don't know exactly what they're doing out there, and we don't know exactly how long they've been there, which I feel adds to the mystery here. Same with that we don't really get an explanation to a lot of questions regarding what the thing is, where it came from. We have Blair's notes that he's writing, and that Fuchs says to McCready later that it could have taken over 1 million life forms on 1 million different planets. So that's him theorizing. But we don't really get any more answers besides that. And for me, perfect. This is a film that you don't need all the answers. You don't need to see the true form of this creature. You don't need to know at the end, is McCready safe and is Childs the thing, or are they both the thing, or neither of them? You don't need those answers, even though we will talk about them. It adds so much more mystique to this, and this Carpenter is amazing at that. Same with Halloween, and this is a big reason I despise the brother-sister dynamic that they pushed in Halloween 2. It's so much more mysterious. It's so much more frightening and terrifying when you don't know Michael's motivations, because he has none. He's pure evil. He's black inside. There's no humanity there. And that just makes it so much scarier than knowing, oh, well, that's his sister. That's why he broke out and went to kill her. Like, it takes a lot away. And I know I have friends out there and there's other horror fans who agree and despise that whole brother-sister thing between Laurie and Michael. This is the same thing here. And I'm glad that it's been able to keep this mystery for so long. That's another concern I have with a sequel to this movie, but we'll talk about that another time. All the shots when Copper goes with Mac to the Norwegian camp and they find the guy who slit his wrist, which I'm pretty sure they had to redo that effect because Carpenter wasn't happy with it. And I think that was an early effect, so he didn't see like all the magnificent like molds and everything for the creature that Bottin made yet. And I'm pretty sure they had to redo that effect, but it looks great here. Then we see that they had something there, and then they find the creature. And just when they bring it back to the base camp and they lay it on the table and they're all looking at it, and then Blair's whole autopsy of it and dissection of it, it looks fantastic. Like, just for an initial creature design, Bottin nailed it. Like, it looks kind of human, kind of familiar, but it's not at the same time. With the twisted face and everything, I love the look of that. And side note on the prequel, like, just there, like when they find the block of ice at the Norwegian camp, the fact they worked that into the prequel perfectly, that's the exact size of the ice and everything that it breaks out of. They paid so much attention to the details, and it's a shame with the CGI in that movie. Side note, off a side note, they use fire to try to kill the thing here. And I said this recently in a video, but didn't expand on it. Can you think of any creatures in horror movies or anything like that that don't die to fire? The only one I can think of off the top of my head is the Blob. Like, specifically the remake. I haven't seen the original in forever, so I don't know. Pretty sure it's the same, though, in the original. But in the remake in '88, the Blob, he's weak to cold, so fire doesn't work. That's the only thing I can think of. So let me know if you could think of any monster or creatures and stuff in a horror movie that fire doesn't burn the living shit out of and kill. I could say this. They work for the government, military, and stuff like that. They definitely had to have given them pounds of marijuana, because the fact that they've been there for whatever amount of time, even if it's just 6 months, and Palmer still has weed to roll that joint, they're sitting on a lot of grass. And just all these characters, like Clark, and just his love for the dogs, and like, he's a good guy, you feel for him. Benning seems like a guy you just want to fucking chill and party with. Same with Palmer, but he has like that don't give a shit attitude about anything. Norris, you're the smartest person there, maybe rivaling Blair, but he's not like a stereotypical 80s nerd or anything like that, brainiac. Like, he's just a normal dude who's just very, very smart. All the characters in this they all have such defining characteristics, and the time that you spend with them, Fuchs is maybe the only one, and Bennings you don't spend time with too much because he gets knocked off first and turned into the thing, well, that they see, which will lead to a whole discussion on the path that the thing takes people over. All the shots of the alien craft and the ice and everything, that looks brilliant. I love all those shots. And when they're watching, before they go on the TV, the recordings from the Norwegians, and them saying, look, they're planting thermite charges, and then it blows. All of that just looks great. Now, we're approaching the dog's transformation scene. When Clark brings the dog into the cage with the rest of the dogs, the way it walks in, it has, it's weird to say like a dog has an expression, but it kind of looks like Carpenter filmed it in a way that the thing in the dog, the creature, knows that it's going to be taking over the rest of these dogs. And it's kind of thinking to itself, like, which one of you lonely little life forms am I going to, assimilate with first? That leads to a big question. Do you think that people know they've been taken over by the thing and they're not themselves while they're taken over? Or do they have no clue and they think they're just themselves until the thing's survival is threatened? Then it has to out itself and try to get to another host. What do you guys think? Because this is a big question that's always been around for this film. Do they know that they're the thing when they're the thing? Or do they have no idea until their body starts ripping apart and everything, which is terrifying just thinking about that. But I know Keith David said a few times in interviews, which, Child's such a great character, and Keith David's phenomenal. He said a few times in interviews that they don't know they're the thing until, like I just said, like it's threatened and then it comes out. But that's just Keith David's opinion. What do you guys think? Let me know. All right, so I've also been trying to think, because I saw this movie for the first time much later than Halloween. Halloween was my first at 6 years old. This was like 12, 13 that I saw the thing. I don't know why I waited so long to see it, but they didn't really show it on TV much back in the day. I think why this movie overtook Halloween for me has to do with the effects work. Like, that's what I think is the only thing that puts the thing over Halloween for me as a horror film. Both are just perfection in every way. But we get to the first extravaganza of effects scene here with the dog. The way the dog's face peels back in those 4 pieces, and then the way you see like that noodle tentacle shooting out of its open face, and I don't even know how to describe it. Then you hear the sound that the thing makes. But that sound, the sound design is fucking phenomenal in this movie. The legs branch out of it and come out, and then the tentacles come out. Nice reverse shots there. All of this still looks amazing. In 2023, this is 1982. There's still no movie to this day that's beat this for me. Like, for effects work, it's just unbelievable work. And it's not just Bottin, it's Carpenter. It's how he chooses to light each scene and each shot. Just showing just enough for it to be effective, but not too much lighting or anything that you can notice the effect right away. Like, he's just, oh god, man, Carpenter is just a master. So then Clark ends up alerting everybody and having them come. And I love his line to McCready when he's, I don't know what the hell's in there, but it's weird and pissed off, whatever it is. That's great. And he says, get Childs. Tell him to get the flamethrower. Then we see more brilliant effects with the dog, like, assimilating with the other one. And then the 2 huge hands that reach up and crash through the ceiling. Then Childs shows up. And Childs, as we see through this movie, is like a take no bullshit, like, show no bullshit motherfucker. He even is so taken aback from what he's looking at that he's in a trance, like, when, and that beautiful shot of the, like, I don't even know what to call it. It looks like a flower blooming outwards, like out of the thing coming towards him. He can't register what he's looking at. Finally, he snaps out of it and he's able to torture with the flamethrower. But all of that, you learn so much from the characters here, just from little things like that, than in most movies today when they try to have good character development. Now, who gets infected first? Who does the thing take over first after the dogs? Because we see a silhouette and it looks just like Norris. There's no one else it could be, in my opinion, but Norris. Like, this is before this scene, and you see the dog before they put him in the kettle. You see him walk into the room with the person sitting there with the silhouette. It's all you see, but it has Norris's hair, his outline and stuff. So I've always assumed that Norris is the first one taken over. Then it would have to go to Bennings for him to have the scene outside when we get the roar, like, sound from the thing, which sounds fantastic. And then Palmer. and then Blair. So let me see if I got this right. It would have to start with Norris. Norris would have to be the one who sabotages the blood when Bennings is starting to be taken over and stuff. We hear Windows drop a set of keys. Even if you have subtitles on, it says keys drop to the floor. So that's a very important scene, because when they're arguing over the blood bags and who messed up the blood, they say that Gary and Copper are the only two who have access, and Gary usually has the keys. But Windows had the keys here and he dropped them, meaning Norris or... See, I don't know when exactly Palmer is taken over. What do you guys think on that path of the thing taking over? I start with Norris, then it would have to go to Bennings, then Palmer or Blair first. I'm not sure which one, because when they put Blair outside and lock him in that little thing, which is hilarious later when he's saying, I want to come back inside, I'm fine now, I'm all right, and there's a noose hanging behind him. That's hilarious. But when they first put him in that structure outside, is he taken over by the thing yet? Or did he really just snap after doing the math and using his computer, which that's the one thing with this movie that I can maybe pick apart, that computer software that he uses to figure out the assimilation time and stuff. I don't know about all that. Whatever. It's so small. It's push it right out of the way. I don't think about it. But I guess that's another question. When does Blair and Palmer, respectively, get assimilated by the thing? Is Blair already taken over when he snaps and they have the scene that he tries shooting people, and the dialogue from him is fantastic when he's just screaming. You think that thing wanted to be a dog? A dog couldn't make it thousands of miles in the cold. No, that thing wanted to be, slamming the axe everywhere. Then he starts trying to shoot at people, and then they end up taking him and pumping him full of morphine, and they lock him up. So I don't know if he was taken over yet by the thing. Later on, we find out that he dug underneath and was putting together a spaceship. So he was obviously taken over by then. So unless he snuck out of there for parts, I don't know when Blair was turned, is what I'm trying to say. Let me know if you guys know when and where you think that Blair was turned, and when and where you think Palmer was turned. Always wondered, always pondered this every single time I watch this. Alright, more on Blair. I told you, this is going to be all over the place. There's always been a theory that this is when he gets taken over, or shortly after this, I should say. During the autopsy of the carcass of the thing that they just burnt to a crisp, which all of that looks fantastic too, with him cutting up and going, reaching inside of it. Great. A lot of people think this is when he possibly was contaminated by the thing. He takes his pencil, the eraser side, and he points something out on the thing. And they think, and then he puts it near his mouth, leading you to think this is probably where the contamination happened. But when you look at that scene and when you pause it, he's not touching the thing directly with the pencil. There's a shadow that you can see, so that you can see he came close to touching it, but it wasn't directly on it. So I don't think this is where he gets, he makes contact with the thing and then starts being taken over. So then I always wonder when Blair did. So again, you guys, the whole scene between Blair and Clark in the dog cage, and there is so much friggin' tension in the scene just between the two of them, because you know that Blair's figuring this out and pretty much figured this out already, and he's looking at Clark and saying, how long was the dog in the rec room? And then he looks at him, he says, how long were you alone with that dog? And then he's, nothing, it's probably nothing. But there's a lot of tension in that scene between the two of them. I love when Childs starts saying all this voodoo bullshit, like that he doesn't believe any of this, and I mean, how do you deny what you've just seen? Come on, like with Childs, you just stared into the blooming flower, whatever, of a creature from another planet. I love when Palmer, he chimes in, and he ends up saying, like, they're falling out of the skies like flies. Like, the government knows about it, right, Mac? Chariots of the gods, man. Like, he's all in for this, like, yep, aliens exist. They've been around the planet forever. The government knows all about it. That's exactly how I feel. Alright, so now is when we get the scene with Blair on the computer with that crazy software. not out of realm of possibility, so it's whatever. But if he was infected, if let's say that pencil did touch the thing and he put it to his face and now he's taken over by the thing, why would he be trying to figure out, like how this thing works to try to find a way to defeat it in some way? Unless it calls back to the other question, do they know that they're the thing? If he's the thing right now doing the assimilation computer work, he wouldn't know. And he would continue his natural thoughts and life and instincts of trying to figure this out. He's a doctor. He's a scientist. So in order to have an answer to that question, you need an answer to that question. There's so many friggin' interpretations to this. I remember now. Now, I embarrassed the shit out of myself in my original video for the thing, because for some reason, man, I don't know what I was thinking. When they say the entire world population be taken over in 27,000 hours, I said 3 days. Not 3 years. I mean, of course it's 3 years. 3 days, 27,000 hours. I don't know what I was on then. 3 years, and the entire world would be taken over. Imagine that. Just 3 years. Like, look at the last 3 years, how fast they went for you. 3 years, that's it. The whole world's gone. Then what does the thing do? Does it just chill, like, on a beach? Like, sipping drinks and, like, all right, another planet we got down. Let's move to the next one in a century or so. Let's enjoy this. Like, what does it do afterwards? I'm curious. What do you guys think the thing does after it takes over an entire planet? Does it just hang out and chill? Does it try building a ship to go to another planet? We don't know its motives. Like, does it assimilate just out of survival and biology? Or does it have a reasoning? Is it an intelligent creature that it knows what it's doing? There's another question. Then we have Fuchs meeting Mac in the helicopter or whatever, some machine outside the snowplow or whatever, and starts reading Blair's notes to him and saying about the million other planets and million other life forms that could have taken over. And this is when he tells him that, these cells that have been burned, they're not dead yet. And coinciding with that is when we see it dripping down from the remains, and then Benning gets taken over. Small effects work, but still, can't imagine how much time went into it. When Windows sees Bennings sitting in the chair with the things wrapping around him and he's turning into Bennings, like, that looks really cool. And that's where you hear the keys drop, when Windows runs out of the room after seeing that. Because a few scenes before that, he says, go get the keys from Gary. Then like I said, with the subtitles, it says keys clattering. So he drops these keys. So I'm always going to think that Norris is the one who sabotages the blood, unless somebody has another theory. What a damn sound, man. That sounds so good every single time. It's haunting. Yeah, rewatching this now, I mean, I've seen this movie an unhealthy amount of times, but I always think different things when I watched this, which is why I wanted to revisit this movie. He broke the chopper up. He's taken the axe to all the computers and everything. So I really don't think he's taken over yet, Blair. Let me know if your opinions differ on that. But I really don't think he's taken over. I think he's just snapping. And he's saying, like, you guys think I'm crazy. That's fine. He's the only one that knows what's going on here, like, to the fullest extent. And I love how later on, like Fuchs says, like, I think that we should prepare our own meals and only eat out of cans. So, like, just that small detail thrown in there. At least these people are smart enough to think of that. Then they bring Blair into the outside structure that they lock him in. And he says to MacReady, watch Clark. So if he was taken over already by the thing, wouldn't he not want to try to out the thing if Clark was taken over by the dog? So and that also makes me lean that Blair's not the thing at this point. But that also brings up another question. There's a lot of them. Now, does the thing, is it all linked together? You know what I'm saying? Like, if it's Norris and Palmer at the same time are taken over, do both of the things then act on their own survival? I don't think so, because the whole blood test shows otherwise. That when he attacks Palmer's blood, that's a piece of the thing, and that's when it starts ripping out a polymer. So I think it's always one organism linked together. You know what I mean? Like, they don't go their separate ways. Oh, our separate way, love will find you. But let me know what you think. Do you think the thing is always linked to the thing, and that no matter how many it takes over, if you fuck with one of them, it's gonna like bring the thing out of whatever it's in? Or do they go on their own paths after that, and there's multiple things that are disconnected from each other? And Gary, I love Gary's character too. Like, you could tell he's over his head. And he even says it. And then when Windows has his freak out, which is another nice little thing to make you think maybe Windows is possibly the thing. There's so much of that thrown in here, just like to make you wonder who's taking over. Why are they doing this or acting this way? Possibly they're the thing. Like I said, the whole sense of paranoia is just explored amazingly here, like in every single way. I'll also say we're about an hour into this movie. It's one of the fastest moving hours in a film for me. Like, it never feels like an hour has gone by. That's how just sucked in and engrossed in the film I am every time I watch it. Oh, I love this movie. Okay, now we'll get more on this at the end, about the ending, about is MacReady the thing, is Childs the thing, are they both, or neither of them? But just take a note that when MacReady and Knowles go out, they find Fuchs's body, and it's all charred up. Then he notices the lights on in his place, and he goes up there, and then Knowles cuts him loose, and when they let Knowles inside, he shows that he found MacReady's drawers and stuff that were ripped up and put up the furnace. Keep that in mind. Also keep in mind the question from earlier, is it an intelligent life form? Would it think to try to frame somebody, like rip out of clothes, and then try to mislead everyone by putting MacReady's clothes up the furnace? Keep those things in mind for the ending. I love when they're arguing, mostly Palmer, about going out with Windows. He's like, I ain't going with Windows. It's like, I'm not going, I'll go with Childs. So they start yelling at each other, and then MacReady's just like, all right, cut the bullshit. All the interaction between these characters is either hilarious or really lets you see into who they are, which makes you care for them. It makes you wonder who's going to survive this. Okay. So let's talk the scene now where MacReady goes to Blair. Well, he's locked up, and this is where we see the noose hanging, and he's saying he's fine. That's great. At this point, is Blair the thing? Because then he gets up, and he comes right close to the slot to talk to him by the door, and he really starts acting weird. And starts saying, like, listen, I want to come back inside. You got to let me back inside. Now, is he the thing now? If so, how? That's what I've always wondered. If he's the thing, we already know that someone was out there and torched Fuchs, or Fuchs burned himself to not be assimilated by the thing. So I'm guessing it's Norris who we saw out there. But if Blair's been infected, like, since he put the pencil in, and I'm wrong on that, then he would have been infected the whole time he's locked up outside here in this compound. So do you think he's the thing at this point, when the noose is hanging and he's begging to be let inside? Or do you think that his transformation and assimilation by the thing happens even later than this? Because we don't see inside, and we don't see the mini UFO or spaceship that he's building until later on in the film. So at this point, he could still be Blair. And then the thing, I guess Norris or Palmer, after he's assimilated, could have came out and infected Blair. Let me know. Yeah, Knowles cuts him loose, MacReady, on the tow line, and they let Knowles inside. And he says that about his drawers, that he found his clothes in the oil furnace. Now again, this would mean that somebody's trying to frame MacReady and try to make them think he's the thing. So either it's an intelligent life form and it can make these decisions, or is MacReady the thing? Was he turned way earlier in the film and we just don't know the whole time? But for me, it doesn't work because he's trying to kill the thing the whole time. We know the thing tears through your clothes when it outs itself or it's been outed. So Let me know your whole thoughts on MacReady's drawers and stuff being torn up in the furnace in his place. Also, I love the small foreshadowing that Carpenter throws in here with Norris. How you see him get pains in his chest 10 minutes or so before what I consider the greatest scene ever put to film. Love that they threw that in there so it doesn't feel as out of place or random that he just, falls to the ground and having a heart attack or his heart stops. They show him having pains earlier. So I like that they threw that in there. Could you imagine how fucking furious MacReady would be at Noel specifically, but at everyone for not letting him in and stuff if he's not the thing? Like, oh man, I'd go a lot further than just holding dynamite in my hands and saying, we're going to blow up if you come near me. Now, I've said in my Halloween video, and I've said it a few times since, if we're talking scariest scene, I don't even like saying that because nothing in films really scare me, but in Halloween, the whole sequence from Laurie walking over across the street, finding the bodies, and then Michael's chase with her and she's screaming on the lawn and Tommy, open up, Tommy, please, all of that is the most tense scene ever put to film. But this scene, and again, I really just think it's the effects work that pushes it over. It's my favorite scene in a movie, the defibrillator scene. Everything about this scene and the blood tests, but for some reason this one trumps it for me. Everything about both of those scenes are just filmmaking at the highest level possible that we've ever seen, in my opinion. Like, the lighting, the editing, the effects work, all the people that had to work these effects, they had to redo the thing coming out of Norris's chest because Carpenter thought it looked too much like a water fountain the first time. So imagine doing all that work as Rob Bottin and his crew and stuff. And then they burn it because it's part of the scene. And then Carpenter's saying, yeah, I really didn't care for how it looked. You're going to have to make all that again. Man, like, I can see why he got treated for exhaustion throughout the film of this movie. Norris collapses and Copper brings him in, and then the clear, everything's all right. Clear, and it just goes right through his chest. The teeth clamp down on the hands, and then what a great shot, and how freaking creative of a way to do this, that they ended up using a double amputee. He was missing both his arms, and they put a mask of Copper over the double amputee. So once his arms get ripped out by the chest thing, you see his stubbies, you see his stubs like just wilding in the air, and it looks great because of the way it's lit, the way it's shot. You can't tell it's not Copper. Like, it's really hard. You have to pause it. And even then, it still looks like Copper. So, excellent job. You're going to have to sleep sometime, MacReady. Well, I'm a light sleeper, child. Great dialogue. Like, if it was just that, it still would be mad impressive. But then the table starts shaking, and his body's just split open in the middle, and the green, yellow tentacles and shit, and then it spews out, and we get that phenomenal shot. And I love how he decided to make the head have partially Norris's face and hair. Like, even though it has all the weird arms and stuff sticking up, it still kind of looks like Norris. That's great. Then just the whole head starting to expand and the mouth, the sound that it's making, and then just the spider head again. Great reverse shots. They had him, out, and they pull it in the legs of the head. Then it would play backwards and it would sprout out. The shot of it peeking out from under the desk and making that like warbly sound, that's fantastic too. All of this is so well crafted, so creative, so much work was put into this, and it fucking shows, and it stands the test of time to this day. We hear this line in so many movies, but this is one where I love it. When Palmer turns around and sees a spider head walking away, says, "You gotta be fucking kidding," and then he turns around and torches it. The greatest scene in a movie. Like, for me. Oh, I almost forgot about when, after the head of Norris comes stretching down the table and off the body, then his tongue comes flying out and connects to the desk and it starts, like, moving on the ground. Oh man, I love this so much. And then we get the blood test scene, just back to back, just excellent, phenomenal sequences. It's really too much. Like with the genius of everyone who worked on this film. But the blood test scene, man, it's so tense. There is so much suspense in this scene. Because at this point, the first time you see this, you have no idea. Like, is one of them the thing? Or two of them? Is everybody? You know, like maybe except Kurt Russell, McCready. Is everyone the thing? You don't know. And the way that Carpenter builds that tension. Another thing thrown in here is the way that Windows cuts his own thumb to get his blood. I love how, I'm pretty sure it's intentional the way he did it. He like goes like this with his thumb, but he like cuts behind it and then squeezes it into the petri dish. It kind of puts in your head, alright, is he taken over by the thing and he just did some like sleight of hand or some shit? It really makes you think it's Windows. So then when you get the revelation that it's Palmer and they're all Childs and Gary are tied to the couch with him, and then all of those effects, like the blood, how it sprouts out of the petri dish, then the little spots of blood shimmy away, like that's great. But then the eyes bugging out of Palmer and his face ripping apart, and then the way he flies up to the ceiling and then drops down in front of Windows, and Windows is, again, like Childs from earlier on. It's like very Lovecraftian stuff in this film regarding like if you think of Lovecraft, like with the elder gods and the, you know, all of that type of stuff, and that if you see it, it would drive you crazy because you just can't comprehend what you're seeing. Same thing here with Windows. He's just staring at it after the head rips in half, and then he grabs his head and starts fucking flying him around. All of this is just unbelievable. If you think of the work that Rob Bottin and his crew, I think it was only a few people, had to work just for these effects, that alone is a masterful feat. But then everything else that it's Carpenter directing, and the way he directs it, and Ennio Morricone's score, and the characters, the acting. Can you guys figure out yet why this is my favorite movie of all time? And I adore the shot of Palmer thing on fire with the head split open like a Venus flytrap, and McCready burns it, and you get that shot of the head moving forward on fire. That's such a great shot, man. This is another thing here that lends some credence to the theory that they don't know that they're the thing until it's outed, because Knowles and Windows look terrified in the blood scene. Like Windows before all the shit hits the fan, and he's dead anyway, so it don't matter. But he looks afraid when he's getting his blood tested, and he even sighs like relief afterwards. So he looks like he's panicked that he might just rip apart into the thing. So I always kind of lean towards that they don't know until, you know, its survival is threatened and the thing has to do its thing, pun intended, and come out. That's what I've always leaned towards, but I'd love to hear other people's theories on it. Gary's line, "I'd rather not spend the rest of this winter tied to this fucking couch." One of my favorite lines of the movie. So then it's just now McCready, Childs, Knowles, Gary, and Blair, who is now taken over by the thing. So again, when was he taken over? This is when they find the alien ship that Blair's been making out of helicopter parts and stuff. I don't know, man. Like, even in a perfect film, my favorite movie of all time, there's still stuff that's kind of out there that I could pick apart. He put together a spaceship and shit, like with parts that he has no idea this thing from another world has no idea, helicopter parts or anything like that, but he's able to use all those parts to build a spaceship, and that quickly? I don't know about that. So now we're heading towards the end here. I love this effect. Small little effect compared to everything else, but when I first saw Society by Brian Yuzna, instantly the shunting scene, the infamous shunting sequence at the end of Society, reminded me of this. When Blair goes up to Gary and just like his hand melds into his face and becomes one, and like he assimilates in that way, very similar to the shunting scene. Now, Knowles gets knocked off, so it's only McCready in the thing. Childs this whole time, as he says when they meet back up, him and McCready, he says that he saw Blair and got lost in the storm. Now, I've read and seen videos a while back. Something regarding Childs' coat, that he's wearing a different jacket at the end when he meets up with MacReady, and they show a shot of a coat on a hanger, trying to, I guess, make you think that Childs was assimilated and broke through his original jacket and had to put another one on. Now, that's one thing to do with the ending. Then we get one of my favorite, like, you know, fuck you to the bad guys ending line, and the whole thing looks fantastic. Like, with the T-Rex face to the side, and the arms, and then the dog busting out of the chest. And then we get MacReady's, yeah, fuck you too. Throws the dynamite, blows it all up. Great line. So then we have the ending with Childs coming up to MacReady, and they're both worried about each other. And then he just says, why don't we just wait here a little while, see what happens. Now, who is the thing? Is MacReady the thing? Is Childs the thing? Are neither of them the thing? Are both of them the thing? Now, me being a cynic, I really like the idea of both of them being the thing and humanity's fucked, like, no matter what. And rescue team will get here, the thing leaves and infects the whole world. But there's a lot of theories behind this. Like I said, with the coat is one thing for Childs, leading towards him being the thing. When you look at their breath, MacReady has, you know, oxidation, like breath coming out in the cold. Childs doesn't have any come out. Now, that seems like something you really have to, like, heavily miss when you're editing this movie together, unless it was intentional, showing that he's the thing, so he's not showing any breath. There's also a theory that when MacReady hands the bottle to Childs and he drinks it, that it's gasoline and that it's not alcohol. And since he's the thing, he doesn't notice the difference, and that's why MacReady gives a little, like a like a little chuckle, as if that confirms for him that Childs is the thing. So I always kind of side with, if anyone's the thing, it's Childs and not MacReady. And then whatever happens after this, we assume that he gets taken over by Childs, by the thing, and then still leads to that bleak ending, you know, all humanity is screwed. But remember earlier on, I said to keep a thing in your head about MacReady's clothes. So if this thing is an intelligent extraterrestrial creature here, and he was able to think ahead to plant his clothing in the furnace, to make people suspect of MacReady being the thing, wouldn't it also know, like, what alcohol tastes like versus gasoline? Like, if that theory even holds water, I don't know. All the things leading to, or hinting at, or theorizing of MacReady being the thing at any point in this movie never worked for me. I do not think he's the thing in the end, but it has always made me wonder that, what's up with the clothing? Like, why was his clothing torn through and stuck up the furnace? Was it just a red herring Carpenter threw in halfway through the movie, just so you can maybe trust nobody? Like, oh, this is Kurt Russell, we can't even trust his character. So I could see that being thrown in there for that, but I've never thought that MacReady was the thing at the ending here. What are your guys' thoughts? Who is the thing at the end? Is Childs the thing? Is it MacReady? Is it neither? Is it both of them? And more importantly, why? Let me know why in the comments. So this is John Carpenter's The Thing, 1982, my favorite film ever made. And it's always a blast rewatching this. It's always a blast talking about it. I can talk about this movie anytime, anywhere. My thoughts will still be all over the place. This is so much to talk about, but I'm pretty sure I touched on everything I wanted to. So this is a nice little revisit. The Thing revisited for October. Spooky season. Why not talk about a fucking masterpiece? Alright, guys. Wherever you're from, hope you're having a great morning, afternoon, or night. I will talk to you guys soon. Take care, everybody.